Greetings from the hilltop. Welcome to today's webinar, How Corporations Can Be a Force for Good, sponsored by Georgetown McDonough's Office of Alumni Relations and the Business for Impact Initiative. We are so glad to have you. Thank you for taking time out of your workday to connect virtually with us. Today's webinar is presented by Patricia Grant, Senior Associate Dean of the Undergraduate Program, who is joined today by 3 undergraduate alumni, Troye Bullock, class of 2016 and co-founder and COO of Good Projects, Danielle Conkling, class of 2001, who leads the CSR program at Silicon Valley Bank, and Jennifer Heflin, class of 2003, as well as an MBA alumna, who is a senior manager with Accenture's management consulting practice. I'm Lauren Apicella, Associate Director of Alumni Relations for Georgetown McDonough, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we get started, I would like to share a few webinar tips and reminders. This webinar broadcast is being recorded. The recording will be made available on our website as well as the Georgetown McDonough YouTube channel within the next few days. You will receive a link to the webinar recording in a follow-up email, which will also contain a post-event survey for you to take, information on upcoming webinars, and more ways to stay connected to Georgetown McDonough. We have solicited questions from attendees through our registration page, and we'll discuss them throughout the panel. Our panelists will also take questions throughout the webinar. So please send in your questions as you have them throughout the webinar using the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Finally, if you're having any technical difficulties or other issues, please submit those concerns to me via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'll now turn it over to Leslie Crutchfield, Executive Director of our Business for Impact Initiative. Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks so much, Lauren, and welcome everyone. Wish we could all be together in person, but so excited to be able to have this conversation virtually on Zoom about how companies can be a force for good. As Lauren mentioned, I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of Business for Impact, which is an initiative here in the McDonough School of Business, which some of you who are alumni might recognize through the name the Global Social Enterprise Initiative, which was founded almost 10 years ago by my esteemed colleague, Professor of the Practice, Bill Novelli. We changed our name to Business for Impact last year to reflect the broader focus of our center on what has become commonly known as the triple bottom line. And our mission at Business for Impact is to unleash the power of the private sector to help people and the planet thrive. And we're all about that triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. And our aspiration at Business for Impact really is a big, hairy, audacious goal, as Jim Collins might call it. We want every leader that walks through McDonough's doors, whether physically or virtually these days during the pandemic, to be renowned and skilled in managing the triple bottom line. We think it's a really close fit with the Jesuit values of the university. And also this moment that we're in, right? As companies within the United States and globally move from a focus on shareholder privacy to meeting the needs of multiple stakeholders. You know, I think about this moment that we're in with COVID-19, the recession, joblessness rates, the racial reckoning that we're in, and the incredible role that business plays in each of those crises that we're facing, both affected by and can impact them. Now, Lauren and Dean Grant have asked me to talk a little bit about how we teach and approach CSR here in the business school. And I want to ground the conversation in how we think about it. Lauren, if you go to the next slide, thanks so much. So with corporate social responsibility, it's all about how do you balance competing stakeholder interests, right? And for many years, even decades, especially here in the US, we have this notion of shareholder primacy, right? And really the purpose of business was to deliver shareholder returns to investors, whether the company's privately or publicly held. But we've seen this evolution over the last several decades as employees really, as companies really need to expand their efforts to meet the needs, not just of shareholders, but their employees, the suppliers that are in the supply and value chain, working through NGO, nonprofit partners, and working directly with communities where they manufacture, operate, and distribute or sell, market their products and services. Obviously, central to all of this is meeting the needs of customers. And companies are really striving more today than ever to align their strategic positions, their competitive positioning in ways so that they can be forces for good and they can do well by doing good, right? Doing good by their employees, by the communities, by the planet that provides the natural resources and inputs into the companies that we serve. And I think we're going to have some really exciting insights coming from the panelists who can speak from their industry perspectives, whether that's through management consulting and strategy or um, finance and impact investing and the other perspectives that we have on the panel. If we go to the next slide, the other framing piece that I'd just like to share is that the way we teach corporate responsibility and how to manage across those different stakeholder interests in the MBA program at the graduate level, we draw a lot on this framework by Harvard Professor Kash Rangan and some of his colleagues that kind of breaks out the practice of CSR into these three buckets, right? Now, traditionally, you see corporate social responsibility as the philanthropic arm of a company, right? You have a corporate foundation, you make grants to communities to try and tackle issues related to education or the arts. You're starting to see more companies move into the second realm of operational improvements. How can you reduce the negative environmental impact of your operations, both within the company and through the supply chain, that can lead to both cost savings and more positive impact on both the people that work for the company and the planet and the natural environment in which we operate. Last but not least, you're starting to see, I would say in the last decade, a focus of companies on really trying to move into a transformational business model. Porter and Kramer at Harvard talk about creating shared value, shared economic, environmental, and social value, where you're really aligning the goals of the triple bottom line in tandem together. So I, for one, am really excited to hear from our esteemed alumni about how they work across these three realms of corporate responsibility and balance all of the different needs of stakeholders that allow businesses to operate in this country and around the world. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Sorry about that. Dean Grant, all yours.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to also offer my welcome and good day to you all. This is going to be an amazing panel. And I just want to underscore a couple of things that you've already heard about each of our panelists and then get right into the meat of our conversation. And to, in particular, welcome all of our alumni and current students who are joining us from near and far. Let's get started. So first, as you've heard, we have Troye Bullock. He is a member of our class of 2016, co-founder and COO of Good Projects. He and his partners are really what we would call pioneers in social impact. They really are focused on creating opportunities for equity and poverty alleviation in our nation's most at-risk populations. And Troye is a Washington, D.C. native, and I know he would not allow me to not mention that. So there you have it. Next, we have Danielle Conkling, as you've heard, member of class of 2001. She is the senior manager and really leads the CSR program at Silicon Valley Bank, where their core aim is to be a catalyst for good, doing good in the world. And she hails from Menlo Park, California. We're also joined by Jennifer Heflin. She's a member of our class of 2003 and an alumna of our MBA program. She is a longstanding member of the team at Accenture and currently a senior manager there. And really has shares a deep commitment to community engagement, which is really top down at Accenture. And so we're looking forward to hearing about the initiatives that she manages for the firm in that regard. And so without further ado, I invite each of you to talk a little bit about your own career path and how you found yourselves doing what you're doing, and to elaborate in any way that you wish on what we've been talking about so far. Why don't we start with you, Troye?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Dean Grant, and thank you to everybody who's joining today. It's a rainy day, but it's a beautiful day on Zoom. It looks like, everybody's background looks nice and pretty. I would say my career path was, really destined to help others, but it definitely wasn't a direct path to build a nonprofit over the last 4 years that, has helped, over 2,000 people in DC. When I was a senior in college, actually, at Georgetown, in the college, wasn't in the business school. I was headed to Teach for America. But as you know, Georgetown's robust alumni network allowed me to really meet some really influential folks around October of my senior year, in which, those folks challenged me to not take my job offer, start something to do good in my community. And, didn't know what that would be, but it started as a summer camp, right in, near the neighborhood I grew up in Anacostia, Southeast DC. And, that summer camp blossomed into so much more. Just realizing my passion, realizing that, I was this close from, being one of the young juvenile men or women that I've served over the last few years, but being able to go to Georgetown, my passion is really, really in the most at-risk and underserved communities in DC. And through the last 4 years, I've, been able to work with DC government to reform what the juvenile justice system looks like. And now, me and my co-founders, who also went to Georgetown and are from Washington, DC, are working to end poverty for 500 families in one of the most poverty-dense housing projects in DC. And man, I tell you, we'll get into it, but to build a nonprofit in Washington, DC, where there are the most nonprofits in the United States, is very competitive. Got to put a lot of work in, but we'll talk more about what it takes in a bit. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Jennifer, you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be on today's panel. In terms of my career path, I started with Accenture 17 years ago and worked in our consulting practice and was having a great run at it, learning a lot, traveling quite a bit. And I continued to remain active in volunteering in the community and had a lot of opportunities to continue to engage in the community as an Accenture employee. And about at the 5-year mark, I was really itching to go back to school and decided that I want to return to Georgetown and continue to be a double Hoya. And I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to really dig in through my MBA experience on all the great CSR related classes. The school was phenomenal in having a lot of classes. And even if there was a class that didn't exist, but we want to spin it up or do some type of new class, there was excitement to do that at the time. And I know that that excitement continues. And so after my MBA, I returned to Accenture with this real passion and excitement. And I really want to dig in on this specific discipline of corporate social responsibility. And I was fortunate to really have a phenomenal run. I spent about 7 years helping to lead and grow our corporate citizenship work and impact across the US. And that was really a phenomenal experience, having Accenture, this huge company of 500,000 employees globally, connecting with great schools, great nonprofits to really increase our impact in the community. My focus was particular on helping students from underserved communities get on a path to college and career success. So I work with KIP and Covenant House and Genesis Works in Europe and had a pretty big portfolio. And then 3 years ago, I actually kind of switched gears and went back into the business, not specific to CSR, but have been in a role really helping to grow our local market across DC, Virginia, and Maryland. But what I'm really proud about is whether you're working in CSR or not, at Accenture, corporate citizenship is permeated through all of our roles. And I have an opportunity to bring corporate citizenship and our goals and those values to my clients and all the work that I do, even in this new and different role. So thank you.
Great. Danielle?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Happy Veterans Day. So I graduated in 2001, and my journey to CSR, I guess, was not expected. But I'll tell you a little bit about that. So when I graduated from Georgetown, I was a finance major in the McDonough School of Business. And so I started my career in investment banking at JP Morgan. I became a management consultant, working with financial services companies at Bain. And then, I went and got my MBA, and I went to Rice University. And I started my career in private banking because I really enjoyed working with people and making a difference in people's lives. And that was at the time how I knew how to do that. I liked advising people and helping people. And so I was working with, high net worth individuals and institutional clients, helping them manage their investment portfolios. But it was really beyond kind of what is their balance sheet. And for a lot of them, it was, well, what impact can I make? And I'm really grateful for what I have and what, the privileges my family have, and how can I make a difference, right? How can I be generous in the community? And so I got involved with that. And bringing that together, when I joined Silicon Valley Bank originally, I was really there to, basically help them build and start a private bank. So I was leading client strategy and business development for them. But I couldn't get away from, okay, I really want to make a difference. And so I kind of latched on to the head of our corporate social responsibility team. And he was like, you're showing up at all the events and you're, asking to join all the boards. And I got involved, and I'd been involved with a number of organizations, uh, that SVB, kind of champion and was working with already. And so, was doing well in my role. And then all of a sudden I heard that opening in the corporate social responsibility team may open. And so one of the executives asked me, he's like, I feel like if you had a second job here, you would do that. Would you be interested in exploring it? I was like, I never imagined in my investment banking and management consulting days, like, I was like, you can get paid and like do this full time. I couldn't believe it. So this, so I was just really lucky, and I knew these roles didn't, pop up very often. And a good friend who, does CSR and ESG at Clorox is like, these roles don't become available often, and so you should definitely take advantage, and you could always go back to what you used to do. And so I did. And so, for those who don't know, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, is kind of the bank to the innovation economy. So imagine all the tech, the tech companies and life sciences companies, especially early stage, we're known for venture debt. That is who we work with. And so I thought, wow, what an opportunity to create force for good, right, through innovation. And I wanted to be a part of that. And so, originally it was about the philanthropy and the social good that we can create. And then very quickly I started working with our executives and the board, and they were like, we really need an ESG program. Would you be willing to help us start that initiative and build that for the company enterprise wide? And so I kind of have a dual hat right now. So I'm on the corporate social responsibility team, leading a lot of our philanthropy and social programs. I am also the ESG director for SVB, and that's a newer kind of strategy that we've been developing over the last couple of years. So I'm happy to tell you more about that as well.
So Danielle, I wonder if we can pick up right where you're leaving us around how your particular corporations, and this will go to all of you, to talk about, how your CSR strategy has evolved over time. And in particular, if you can talk about what it looks like now as you try to meet this moment of health, economic, social injustice, and other crises that are abounding.
Sure. So for us, there are a couple of pillars. We're a bank, and so we are subject to the Community Reinvestment Act, which kind of mandates that banks not just focus on wealthy people, and that's really important. And so that we serve all communities. Now we're an innovation bank and largely a kind of a corporate bank. So it's a little bit different. But for us, the way we really look at it is about serving the community through our employee engagement. So whether that's through philanthropy and donations and volunteering in the community. And that was, for the most part, kind of what we were founded on. So we are very much employee driven and informed. We have a corporate foundation. Actually, nonprofits cannot apply to it directly. Employees within the company have to nominate an organization and apply on their behalf, because we really care about our employees and their passions and their interests. Obviously we've got, corporate initiatives and focus areas, but it's really important that our employees drive that. Even our access to innovation work, which is, kind of our major focus area, which is all about helping all communities have access to the innovation economy, right? So it's not just like the folks who are really familiar with, tech and Silicon Valley, but it's people like, how do we introduce those opportunities to them? That's really important. So similarly to Jennifer, we work with Genesis Works and Europe and a number of organizations, but it's really at all levels. It's not just young people, it's creating, how do we create opportunities for people in underserved communities or those that are, underrepresented in venture and, in opportunities, for founders to get access to capital and mentorship, right? So that's really important. And so, but we do a lot around how do we encourage, sort of personal, philanthropy, but also how do we leverage sort of, the balance sheet of the company to help encourage that. So we do a lot of things around creating rewards where we give a lot of kind of donation credits to our employees and their giving accounts to give back to the community. So if you volunteer as a group, we do that. We help support that. And then it's really evolved and kind of over time. So, for us, innovation is really at the forefront and it's really our purpose, right? So for us, it's about increasing our clients' probability of success. And we don't just see that as financial success. For us, is how can they make impact, right? Silicon Valley is changing the way we live and work and the things that we do, and how can we create good in that? So that's really important to us. So it involves all the stakeholders, whether it's our employees, our clients, the communities in which we serve or they serve. And for 2020, has been more true than ever. I'd say, for example, we were involved with the PPP loans, right, for a number of our clients. And we said right away, that our net fees were going to go right back to the community, right? So that was something that was important to us, that our clients, we wanted our small businesses to thrive, even in this uncertain time. And so we had a number of deferral programs for a number of our clients. We launched right away 3-to-1 match, campaigns for our employees and the community to participate in, created virtual volunteering right away, and we're able to pivot really, really quickly. But the biggest thing was really supporting our clients and our employees. So it was taking like the savings that we had from, not traveling, not having client facing meetings and all the savings, and turning it back and making sure that every employee, including contractors, that they were being taken care of through stipends, and then our clients who were directly, helping small businesses in, life sciences, and that were involved in like the antiviral treatments and, some of them like with the vaccines and some of the solutions, supporting them so they could quickly mobilize and get the funding and the support they needed to really accelerate their support. And so all of that has really been important. And we did the same thing with diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial justice work, really reaching in with our clients and saying, okay, what are you doing? Not just from like a nonprofit perspective, but like, do you have the technologies that can help drive change? And so that's kind of what we've been really investing in. And it ties really nicely to our ESG work, which really has helped us kind of garner that support. But I can talk about that more later.
Awesome. Jennifer, yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us what CSR looks like at Accenture?
Yeah, so for us, we have a mix of philanthropy, so grants that we give to great nonprofits and organizations. Much of the portfolio and granting is related to skills development. So we have a global goal of commitment to helping 3 million people worldwide get the skills to get a job or build a business. And to achieve that very large number, we work with so many phenomenal nonprofits and organizations. And so part of it is giving philanthropy grants to really great organizations. We augment that with pro bono consulting. And so we have people that, are creating strategic plans and supporting our clients on technology and different initiatives every day. But we also have a subset, a practice of people that are providing these great skills pro bono free to certain nonprofits that align with our broader corporate citizenship goals. So I spent a lot of time working with KIPP charter schools on developing some career skilling programming to help KIPPsters on their path to college and career success. And that was actually pro bono investments that Accenture was making in that great school system. We have many other organizations that we work with, but I was fortunate to work with the KIPP school system. We also have volunteerism. So we have skills-based volunteer projects where people give of their time and weekends. So above their normal workday, we scope out projects with great nonprofits. And it's scoped just like any normal Accenture project. You have a project lead and certain roles and a timeline and objectives. And people are using their consulting skills, but in their after hours to providing this analysis and consulting to our clients through this skills-based volunteerism. And then we just have lots of volunteering through mentoring youth in the communities we live and serve. And that's all part of our portfolio, and it's really been a great commitment. In terms of meeting the challenges of the day, I've seen Accenture really step up our commitments. So supporting nonprofits and organizations that are fighting racial injustice. We as a firm have always had a deep commitment to diversity and inclusion. We full stop believe that diverse and inclusive teams drive better results for Accenture and our clients. And diverse and inclusive teams are, what we always strive for. We were the first public consulting firm to put out our diversity metrics back in 2016 publicly, because we believe that transparency drives trust and accountability and pushes us to do bigger and better things. In light of everything going on in the world, in September, we upped our diversity and inclusion metrics and commitments and publicly produced new results that we're proud of and are going to continue to strive for and meet in the coming years. And then also as a result of the pandemic, or what I've seen over the years, I've been at Accenture for a while, but I've also seen an increased focus on mental health and really considering the mental health of our employees, our clients, people we engage in the community. And we've been creating and providing a lot of phenomenal resources to our employees, but also we're able to share those resources with our clients. So definitely a lot going on, and I'm excited to continue the momentum.
That's awesome. And Troye, obviously, good is literally in your name. So tell us how good is approaching this.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the flip side of things. And I think there's, as a nonprofit, we have three main stakeholders that we first have to find and identify, and then we have to make them happy and keep them happy. And the first main stakeholder is Danielle and Jennifer. Like, how do we find you? Like, how do we get to you, and how do we pitch to you
We're here.
Yeah, right. So like, how do we find you? How do we make sure that what we're doing is, in line with you guys' goals, right? And, those goals are ever evolving, with the times. This year we've seen a lot of, corporations, foundations kind of move their priorities and their purpose to the current events. So how do we navigate that, but also stick to our mission? Because our mission is to move 500 families out of poverty in the next 10 years. Who knows what social issues and what is going to happen over the next 10 years that is going to shift funding, that is going to shift priorities, where we have to really, maintain integrity to these 500 families that we've committed to, but also maintain integrity to funders who have, committed, X amount of dollars over 5 years, so really managing funding streams. Well, first finding the funding streams, managing them, and reporting back. And how do we prioritize reporting back over the actual work that we're doing? And that kind of goes to the next stakeholder, is the actual people that we're working with, right? For us to we have a housing project that has about 1,500 people. Out of those 1,500 people, we want to identify 500. Now, this is a housing project that has existed, for over 30 years, and people have lived there for, over 30 years. Now, how do we come in and say, hey, now I'm knocking on your door, literally door to door. This is how we do our outreach, door to door. I'm knocking on your door, and I want to help you get out of the situation. And fighting the institutional barriers that are, if you're in government housing and you begin to make, more money, that means your rent goes up. People are afraid to do that. So how do you come in and really change mindsets more than anything? We can change your life. We have the plan to do that. We have the funds, we have the human capital to do that. But how do we change the minds of our constituents? And how do we keep them happy? There's things like, we're giving out 300, $150 gift cards to Safeway, and partnering with Safeway to give discounts to those families through the holidays. Holding events, on a monthly basis. But things like that during COVID are really, really tough. And for our constituents that we actually serve, it's always about problem solving. What is going on now? So currently, with the pandemic, with distance learning, obviously we can't work with heads of household to get them, new jobs employed, because they're at home taking care of their kids. So we set up a new initiative called the Good Learning Hub, in which we have a 5,000 square foot space where we host kids socially distanced, and they do their distance learning with us, with former educated professionals that can support them with the technology. And as you know, many of the low-income students specifically that we work with have IEPs. So where is that support coming from? Through distance learning. This is the support that we're providing them. So just continuously trying to solve problems to keep our constituents happy. And then the last stakeholder is the employees, right? So, how do we find somebody that we're not necessarily going to pay the big bucks, that is committed to the mission, that is committed every day to maybe put in 60, 70 hours, because it's going to be, it takes a lot more. How do we find that person and keep them happy throughout this? How do we tie their day-to-day deliverables, their day-to-day, job description into that mission that we have to end poverty for 500 families? And, it's consistently finding people and making them happy. And that's what we're doing. And as we evolve, and as we have, it's really difficult for us, a mission that lasts 10 years, with things changing. How do we navigate, the current issues? And, one thing we did do is we did a 15-city tour over 17 days, where we're actually completing a documentary right now around the different Black Lives Matter movements in each city. We started in Juneteenth in Tulsa, where, Trump had his rally, and we held purpose parties. You guys may have seen on Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C., where the mayor gave her speech, and it was a big launch party. So that was our party. We call it a purpose party, where about 10,000 people came, and we took that across the nation to 15 cities. Went to Seattle, saw the CHOP, and met with the leader of the CHOP, met with the FBI in Louisville around Breonna Taylor's case. Went to Minneapolis, and saw the folks that were marching for George Floyd, and ended here in Washington, D.C. on July 4th. So, and how do we again, find the funders to do something like that? There was a Thursday night where we had the idea to do this. The next Thursday we were on the road. But, how do you find funders in 7 days to get on the road to do that and make it happen? And then keep them happy all the way through and after, and create a documentary to present to them. And then how do you get your employees to say, hey, I'm going to jump up and just go on the road in the middle of a pandemic, although this has nothing to do with ending poverty for 500 families. And then how you leave some employees behind and say, hey, you have to continue working on this because this is our mission, but we're going to do this great thing that, that you technically can't be a part of. So a lot of finding and making people happy.
So Troye, you're getting into sort of what's going to be our last question before we start taking some questions from our attendees. And that's really around thinking about the framework that you've all developed and are working within to think about how you balance profit and planet. And I'll add people to that because, for Danielle and Jennifer, you're thinking mostly about your shareholders and in addition to that, some stakeholders. And Troye, you have a stakeholder issue that you've outlined already pretty well. So how do you make sure that this framework sticks together and works so that you can continue doing good for people, profits, and the planet, or nonprofits as it may be?
You want to start? You want me to start? Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a balance. And we, of course, we got to find you guys, but we want to find ways where you guys can come out and really make the decisions and see what's going on, because my nonprofit is very, very different. Nonprofits don't start, out of college and, have $500,000 in revenue in 6 months. That just doesn't happen in the nonprofit industry at all. It doesn't happen. So we definitely got lucky. And, through the partnerships we've created, being on the ground, we've seen nonprofits who've been around for 10, 15, 20 years who don't get the funding that we get. And, that comes from not balancing it the right way, not making investments, into marketing and communications and development and grant writing, but really focusing on the work. So you really have to make, investments into that and have a balance. For us, we had 3 co-founders that were working 120 hours a week, which, was like 6 people instead of 3. But some people don't have that. And some people don't have that narrow-minded focus on marketing and targeting people or the Georgetown network. So it's really a balance. And like who, I think for CSR departments and foundations, it's really something to think about how you're making, long-term macro investments. Because for us specifically and many other organizations, it's not feasible to continue to apply for, the same grant, every quarter and report back findings when, there may not be any findings in a quarter. You may not be able to report back much change in a quarter or even a year, especially what we're doing. So I think it's, meeting in the middle, right? Where foundations and CSR departments kind of have to come down to the communities and knock on the doors with us and see the problems, but also be able to identify those organizations that I mentioned who've been around for 10, 15 years, who don't have that, front office support to get to you guys. But then at the same time, meeting us in the middle when it comes to reporting, when it comes to, saying instead of I'm going to give you a grant for a half a year to a year, but we're looking to make a 5-year investment into you because that's what it takes. And that also saves face on many of what I mentioned earlier about a lot of foundations changing their funding streams or their funding priorities every other, few years. Like how do, that's just taken away from our work. Like now you've changed your funding priorities. Now I got to go find another funder that's going to give us $500,000 to serve these families. That's taken away from us really, doing strategic planning and, actually doing the work. So it's kind of meeting in the middle there somehow, because I know obviously reporting and requirements and all that are necessary. You got to see where the dollars are going. I think we just really have to sit down and, find a way to meet in the middle.
I think to your question, Dean Grant, about, profits and CSR, what we believe is doing great work in the community is great for business. It's great for the community, great for the employees, great for all that are impacted, and that our people expected of us. And so all people at all levels, our most senior CEO, Julie Sweet, she's committed to the community, volunteering, working with great nonprofits, to like the very most new joiner. In fact, when I go out and support some of our recruiting activities, we're talking actively about corporate citizenship, and the students that we're engaging in expect companies to be leading the way in corporate citizenship and engaged in the community. And so that's part of our, our message as we go out and recruit. And then in terms of retention of great employees, so often we'll hear, people are doing great things day in day with their client, but they'll share stories of doing their volunteerism above and beyond their workday. And that's stuff that's really fueling them and fueling their retention and staying at Accenture. And they're doing great work for the community, and they're also enhancing their own skills and really having a great overall experience. And so this idea of like this being competing, that, is it profit or is it corporate citizenship? I don't feel like those things are at odds, that you really can be and should be a leader, and that you can concurrently, have great returns to your stakeholders and continue to grow and prosper. I know specifically with my clients, so often when I'm talking with an existing or new client, we'll talk about our commitments in the community, and often we'll have our project teams not only have Accenture people volunteering at a different school or nonprofit, but we'll look to engage our clients in doing the same right alongside of us. And again, it's just trying to amplify our commitments together.
So for us at SVB, there's no question, right? It's about us being a sustainable, purpose-driven company. And that is not just, the environment, and it's not just climate, and it's not just, kind of what our social impact programs, but what is the governance around that? So it's everything from, how do we operate as an organization internally? What are our practices? What do our employees do? This is all about culture. And then who are the clients that we work with? How do we enable their impact in the community? And then how do our leaders and our, whether it's our executives or board members, ensure that there's oversight of this and that it's happening at the top, right? And it's drilling down to every employee, and that affects, who we hire, how we retain talent. And, honestly, like for us, we hear time and time again, we're an employer of choice because of the philanthropy we do, because of the employee-driven and informed, volunteer programs that we make available, but because of our commitment to climate and the environment. And so that really, when you start looking at that, it's how is this integrated when we look at ESG into our business strategy, right? Our business model, our mission as an organization, but then every day, right? Who are the vendors that we work with? What are the social and environmental practices, in our offices or even in our employees' homes, right? What do we make available to them to support this? So whether that's our public commitments or ESG and sustainability as a purpose being a corporate goal for us, it has to be, front and center. So that's really important. But what does that look like for us? It's how do we champion our clean tech clients, particularly the innovation, right? So I think about some of our clients who are changing, what we eat and the sustainability around this, or, what does this look like for renewable energy sources? Or it's, how do we invest for our clients? What are the options and the strategies we make available for them? Or within our life sciences practice, what innovations are we championing and enabling so that we can create, safe, healthy living for all, right? And especially during COVID, right? In terms of just access to shelter and opportunities for, small businesses and entrepreneurs and their employees. How do we support that through a difficult time? But then as simple as, we're innovators, right? So, and we enable innovation. And so how do we do that in partnership with our clients, right? So, are the things that we're doing and the companies that we're supporting allowing us to think about how do we create more sustainable, efficient commuting, for example? Or, how do we think about mental health or racial justice and equity, right? Are there technologies and innovation that allow us to be better and more informed, whether that's on data or better ways to connect with each other? And then creating those opportunities for people to access that, especially those who may not be aware that these things may exist. And so I think for us, it's really a continuum that's going to constantly evolve. And so, there's, as everybody knows in the ESG world, there's all these frameworks and disclosure expectations, and that evolves. And the great news is that everybody's thinking about this, everybody's talking about this. So it makes it a little bit easier for people like us. But it really does take a village and it takes partnership to get this done. What I love about it, having been on the business side, is this is something that companies don't compete on. We have to work together to elevate that impact, because you can't do it in silos. And so it's so exciting because, I could be working with Jennifer or with Troye and with Georgetown. And like what I would love to see really come out of this is, our Jesuit values as a university, so many of us touch impact in different ways, whether it's our actual roles or it's, part of what we do. I just think we probably have this amazing network and we just have to find each other, because I think it's just tremendous what's going on, and we really have to take advantage of the momentum. So really excited about this.
That's really great, and I think this is what's bubbling up in the Q&A here. We have about 10 minutes left to deal with approximately 5 questions. I'm going to try and combine 2. One of the questions is around, how you really, combat the widening wealth gap in the country that is, being talked about in so many corners. And then also, as you were starting to allude to, Danielle, what does it look like when companies and ordinarily competitors join forces to tackle some of these wicked problems?
Sure. Happy to take that. So obviously the widening wealth gap is a challenge for so many communities, and it impacts different sectors, right? So for us, workforce development is really, really important, but also access to the opportunities. And so a lot of what we do is really working with our clients to say, okay, your workforce doesn't have to be what you traditionally think about it, right? So you have a war for talent in Silicon Valley for engineers, but your engineers don't have to come from MIT and Stanford. Maybe, but we've got great talent at HBCUs. We've got great talent in first gen programs at schools like Georgetown. And they're just really, really smart people where like getting to college is a challenge, right? And so there's programs like Year Up, right? Or Genesis Works, where they provide opportunities. And we've got a couple of people on our team who are coming out of those programs where, it's really about skill development, giving opportunities. And now, a couple of my interns who are now full-time are back in college and finishing their degrees. And right, it's about giving them that opportunities. And so when you think about that wealth gap, it's thinking about what are really the challenges for certain communities and how can you help bridge that and support that. And I think what's been really great, for example, with Year Up is that they've got this amazing network of companies that support them. And so it's been, for us, we've been able to go out to our clients and say, hey, there's this really great organization, or there are a number of organizations we work with. Would you want to join us, right? This is a pipeline for really fantastic talent that you normally wouldn't be able to tap into, and they're just finding so much value from looking beyond the box.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I wonder if you can answer a sort of related question,
Sure.
which is around how you sort of manage philanthropic initiatives and employee engagement programs, and in related to that, how do you balance the company's strategic priorities and CSR around goals, metrics, et cetera, while trying to encourage employees to engage with the issues they care most about?
Well, for us, with employee engagement, like the large investments that we make from a grant, like cash pro bono perspective, we only do that in alignment with employee engagement. So if we're creating some big check and we're looking for big outcomes, we typically would tag that same project with a pro bono consulting team, but also would tag it with a commitment that we're going to have volunteers in that region really actively support the nonprofit. You know, we don't want to just be one part of the pillar, we want full alignment. So for instance, Covenant House, they're a great organization that supports homeless youth across the country. There's a Covenant House in DC. We give cash funds to Covenant House. We also volunteer our time with Covenant House youth. And then we actually have hundreds of people every year that sleep out. They sleep on the streets with Covenant House as part of their annual sleep out to get exposure to, gosh, what might it look like to be a homeless youth even for just one night? And that's an example of not only giving cash, but doing the volunteerism and getting involved in an event like sleep out. So we try to do them hand in hand. It'd be pretty rare to only give cash to a nonprofit. In fact, I'm really not familiar with an example like that because we so much tie it to pulling our employees along in the ride and getting them engaged with that nonprofit. And then in terms of, I think you were asking about just like the strategy of these CSR engagements. Like first and foremost, we try to figure out what type of impact we can have with that nonprofit. And if we're making an investment, to what extent it can scale. So for certain investments, it's A-okay just to have a local nonprofit. They might only have one location, but for some of our investments, we really want to pick nonprofits and organizations where we can replicate that. So do something really cool in DC and take that model to other locations across the United States. Mainly because Accenture is so big, it's kind of smart to have that scale type model. So one element is about, you know, to what extent can we scale with this nonprofit? The next element is, you know, to what extent really can we engage our employees in this effort together? Another element would be to what extent are we engaging our clients, or how might we in the future, or are our clients actually already engaged with that nonprofit? Our goal is obviously the more we can bring into the fold other great organizations and clients, we certainly want to do that as part of our strategy so that we can, for all these things, really amplify our impact.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Troye, you're going to have the last word on this one. The last question is centered around how you find traction amongst donors to find the money to sustain your activities as an NGO or nonprofit, because sometimes, as was expressed in the Q&A, you know, you could be running an organization for 12 years, achieving some success, but maybe you know, needing a little bit of a jolt to help find those donors and find those windows of opportunity to keep things going.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the person who asked the question is located, but I know in DC there's a grants listserv, and many local governments do have them. So that's first, get on the grants listserv. You may get, you know, an email every week or every month about the available grant opportunities in your city. You've been running the organization for 12 years. That means you most likely qualify for federal grants as well. So get on those listservs. Definitely make an investment, you know, into some interns, right? Like, but just those interns have to be specific for that research. You know, we made an investment in 3 interns that all they did all day was research funding and grant opportunities. But within that research, you and your interns can identify what your competitors and what organizations like you, where they're getting their funding from, right? You know, essentially, you know, poaching a little bit, right? Like, so your mission and your outcomes align with this organization that is receiving funding from X foundation or X corporation. It's time for you to reach out to that organization because you know that they support initiatives like that. Get you a letter of intent that states your change theory and the data up to this point. I would definitely say if you don't have like a 12-year report, like, or a report for each year, that really highlights the data that you've achieved throughout these 12 years, definitely have that prepared when you're, you know, reaching out to those organizations, and definitely just have your change theory ready. A lot of people want to invest in evidence-based theories right now. So if you have proved that, you know, over 12 years, and I'm sure you have, if you have outcomes, you have proved an evidence-based theory, definitely use that when you're reaching out. But it's making that investment, and not necessarily dollar-wise, but time-wise, into highlighting that data, highlighting how you're going to track data in the future, and then doing the research on those who are already funding stuff like yours. And whoever asked that question could definitely reach out to me for sure to get more details, because I'm not sure what you do, but I could answer it better if I knew specifically what you did. So definitely reach out.
That's excellent. It's a great place for us to stop our conversation for today. And I just really want to thank each of you for taking the time to share such masterful and magnificent insights with our Hoya community. We could go on for quite some time because there's so much more meat that we didn't get to, but we know that there's more opportunities in our future. And so again, I just want to thank each of you for sharing, and thank everyone for coming. And I'll turn it back over at this moment to Lauren to close us out.
Thank you, Dean Grant, and thank you, everyone, Troye, Danielle, Jennifer, and Leslie. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to our attendees for joining us today for this webinar. As a reminder, the recording will be made available on our website as well as our YouTube channel within the next few days, and you'll receive the link to the recording in a follow-up email along with the survey and more information. But this was really a wonderful conversation, and I cannot thank our panelists enough. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and we look forward to our next webinar. Have a great day.